In this section we cover brace expansion. Now, the bash shell, upon executing a command as instructed by the user or by a script that's running in the background, essentially in a non-interactive session or non-interactive shell, will expand any of the words that are inputted on the command line and executed or attempted to execute. And the very first expansion that occurs is called brace expansion. Now there are 7 general types of expansions. The brace expansion is very important because it helps us to automate. It helps us to do more with less, to create more files, more directories, remove, to use the system essentially to create more with less. So it's important that we understand how brace expansion works, as you'll be using them in your scripts and for administering Linux systems. Let's open a shell and we'll show you what we mean. Now, generally when you want to create, let's say, multiple directories, for example, and that's the easiest example, or multiple files, what you do is as follows. You create them one by one if you don't have the power of the bash environment to make use of facilities such as brace expansion. Let's navigate into a directory we have here called temp2. This is a blank directory. And we're going to show you the classic way of creating files without the power of bash and brace expansion, which, by the way, happens first amongst all expansions. So if you wanted to create, let's say, 3 files called test1, test2, and test3, you typically do as follows. Touch test1, run the same command again, edit it, test2, test3. Now these are 3 empty files, but we had to create the files in a manual way. This is not an automated, efficient way. Let's show you how brace expansion can help. First and foremost, let's get rid of everything here, and we'll show you a quick way to create these files. It's blank. Using brace expansion for files and or directories, remember directories are simply special types of files, you'd simply run the following command. Touch, and you specify what's unique in the file, such as the prefix test, and then you open braces and specify using commas as your delimiter the options that'll make up the list for the bash shell to include in its brace expansion. So in this case we'd like to include 1, 2, 3. Now this is much more concise. It's one command which will create effectively these three files, not directories in this case, these 3 files for us. Let's show you how that works. Now you notice no error was returned. We'll do an LSL, and we yet again have 3 files, tests 1 through 3, and they have different date stamps than the one before, indicating that they were newly created. So this is using a basic form of brace expansion. Let's show you a more complex form. We'll run the same touch command, but we'll now add a suffix. So the prefix of the file name will be called test. The brace expansion performed by bash will input into an internal list the options or entries test1, test2, and test3. We can also add a suffix. Let's say, for example, we want to add a suffix to each file name that's created called file. So test1 file, test2 file, test3 file will be the output. Let's show you how that works. We'll do an LSL, and we now have, in addition to the test1, test2, and test3, test1 file, test2 file, test3 file. Test is the prefix, 1 was included in the brace, file is a suffix. Let's remove everything from this directory and show you that again. Let's say we want to create other entries within this particular directory, but this time we'd like to create directories instead of files. Simply use the make directory command, because bash will honor brace expansion run against virtually any command. And instead of creating a file by using touch, we use make dir. So we'll use make dir, and we'll follow the same pattern. We'll call these particular directories test as the prefix, open brace, and we'll make the directories tests 1 through 5, for example. Let's extend it a little bit. No suffix this time. We'll press enter, and when we LSL, we now have directory entries instead of file entries. Notice the difference in the color, but more importantly, the prefix in the first column of the permissions, which indicates that the entry is a directory. So we've created quite quickly and quite efficiently 5 new directories called tests 1 through 5. Now we can also combine braces, so we can add additional braces to come up with various combinations. Let me show you what I mean. Let's remove everything that's in here, and we'll run the same make directory command, but we could, for example, include yet another set of braces, such as 6, 7, 8, 9, and you'll see what I mean. Now look at what happens. It gets a bit confusing if you don't follow it, but now we have all these different entries. We have one for each matching set, so we'll have test 1, 6, test 16, test 1, 7, test 17, 18, 19, and then it goes over to 2. So for each one on the left, it matches with the right and creates a new word out of the 2 braces. So Bash essentially is concerned with creating words out of your entries. And then, based on the words that are populated in the list, it'll perform actions. The braces just function as a neat, programmatic, scriptable way of creating many things in a short command. So now we have all these entries that we may not necessarily want created much, much easier than actually creating these things manually. The traditional way would have been to create each entry manually. Let's clean up in here. We'll remove rf star. So we've shown you with make directory as well as with touch. Those are 2 common ways to actually use brace expansion. You could use the ls command as a way of making use of brace expansion to show you just certain directories if you'd like. You could use the remove command with brace expansion, but if you have the particular directories or files or entries in a clean directory like we have here, a remove -rf star or asterisk works much, much cleaner. But nonetheless, if you've created entries such as these using brace expansion in a more heavily populated directory, then using brace expansion to remove the entries works out just fine. Let me show you what I mean. Let's touch a few files. We'll call these files file, files. We'll open braces 1, 2, 3. And keep in mind you can nest braces. We'll press enter. And now we have files 1 through 3. How about removing these files? Let's pretend there are a bunch of other files in this directory and remove -rf space asterisk is not an option. Simply execute a similar command, or just find the command you use to actually create the files, and just use the remove command and let Bash take care of the rest. Bash will expand into a list these values you see here to files 1, files 2, file 3. Let's show you how that works. Notice all the files are gone because Bash took care of the brace expansion before handing control over to remove. So that's, in a nutshell, the power of brace expansion, which is performed by default. Now, if you execute a command which does not contain braces, then the Bash shell simply does not perform brace expansion. So keep that in mind. Braces are not required, but they certainly help. You can easily use braces to create many, many files, many combination of files, combination of directories on the fly. You can also create subdirectories or files within subdirectories from a totally different directory using brace expansion. So in other words, using the prefix, the subdirectory, or the absolute path to the subdirectory as a prefix. Let's show you how that works. Let's navigate out of the, and we'll use PWD to show you where we are. We're in root temp2. Let's navigate to the absolute root of the directory structure. Now let's pretend, or let's attempt to create within root temp2 a bunch of files or directories. Either or, it doesn't matter. You essentially use the make directory command for one and the touch command for the other. Let's touch, and we'll specify as a prefix. Bash accepts directory paths as prefixes, and this is very useful. Let's touch within root temp2, and now we open braces, and we'll specify the name of the file. but you could prefix it if you want. Let's say by doing files, and then within the braces specify 1, 2, 3, close braces, and let's see what happens. Now if we LSL root temp2, we'll see that files 1, 2, and 3 were created. So in a scripting environment, this becomes a powerful concept because you can issue one command which preserves the prefix of root temp2, also the prefix of the file name, and then let bash handle the brace expansion or the creation of the multiple words that will then be passed to the command, in this case touch. Let's show you the same instance for the make directory command. We'll make directory, and we'll use a different pattern, for example. We'll call these guys ABC, and we'll have ABC1, ABC2, ABC3. Now within root temp2, we have 3 newly created directories, ABC1, ABC2, ABC3. And don't forget, you can also append suffixes. So if you'd like to add to the end of this, for example, DEF, that works out as well too. Let's LSL in temp2. Now we have ABC1 DEF, ABC2 DEF, ABC3 DEF. It's that simple for file creation, directory creation, etc. Let's show you an example of brace expansion along with tilde expansion. Now we're at the root of the directory tree. We can touch and specify the tilde, which enables tilde expansion. Once again, the expansions are only called if the keywords are present. In the case of brace expansion, the keywords include the braces, open braces and close braces. In the case of tilde expansion, the tilde is necessary. So we'll touch tilde temp2 GHI, and we'll open braces, and we'll call this 4, 5, 6 to be different. 4, 5, 6. Close braces. So we'll end up within our home directory, within the temp2 directory, with file names called GHI4, GHI5, and GHI6. Now that uses tilde expansion because we use the tilde. We're not in our home directory, but we gave bash more work to do. It had to figure out, first and foremost, the mapping of the home variable, which equates to the tilde, and then brace expansion. So that's a usage of both. Let's verify the options, and we'll use the tilde here, temp2, and you'll see GHI 4, 5, and 6 as newly created files. That's a neat way to use brace expansion. Now let's clean up those GHI files. Let's find the touch command, and we'll get rid of touch and simply specify remove -rf tilde expansion temp2 GHI 4, 5, and 6 using brace expansion. Now if we LSL temp2, you'll notice that they're gone. And likewise, you can do it for the other patterns that exist, and they'll disappear as well. Remove -rf, and we have other patterns. Simply follow the patterns wherever it's unique. So in the case of ABC, open brace 1, 2, 3, close brace DEF, that will get rid of those files, and we can LSL, they're gone. We still have 2 more patterns to clean up. We'll remove RF, tilde expansion temp2, ABC, open brace 1, 2, 3, that will get rid of those files. And the very final pattern, which we'll remove using tilde expansion, temp2, files, open brace, 1, 2, 3, will clean up those files. And now when we ls, they're all gone. So practicing brace expansion will help you to be more efficient with scripting, and even if not for scripting, just in your general usage of the bash environment on your Linux box, because it'll help you to create files, directories, and to manipulate files and directories much quicker, much easier, much faster. We'll look at some of the other expansions, the important ones, as we continue.